At 5:47 on the morning of the 18th of March, 1944, First Lieutenant William Ash crouched behind a wooden storage shed 40 yards from the perimeter fence of Stalag Luft III, watching two Wehrmacht guards complete their patrol pattern for the third consecutive morning. 26 years old, Texas farm boy shot down over France 11 months earlier, flying a Spitfire Mark I. The guards followed the same route every dawn, 180 seconds from the eastern watchtower to the supply depot, 90 seconds stationary while they smoked. 180 seconds back. Ash had timed them for 9 days. The gap in their coverage lasted exactly 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Enough time to cross 40 yards of open ground, cut through the wire, and disappear into the pine forest beyond. Stalag Luft III held 10,000 Allied aircrew in 6 separate compounds near Saken, 100 miles southeast of Berlin. The camp had been designed specifically to hold pilots. Triple wire fences, raised guard towers every 100 yards. Seismograph sensors buried 15 feet deep to detect tunneling. Guard dog searchlights. The Luftwaffe administration considered it escape proof. In the 14 months since the camp opened, 273 prisoners had attempted escape. All 273 had been recaptured within 48 hours. Most never made it past the forest. The longest anyone had stayed free was 6 days before German police caught him trying to board a train to Switzerland. Ash had been planning this escape for 7 weeks. Not through a tunnel. The camp's 3 major tunnel operations had all been discovered. The last one, codenamed Tom, had been found on the 8th of September after 4 months of digging. The Gestapo had shot 2 of the tunnel organizers as an example. Ash learned from that. Tunnels took too long, too many people involved, too many opportunities for someone to talk or make a mistake. His plan required exactly one person himself. This was not his first escape attempt. Since arriving at Stalag Luft III in April 1943, Ash had tried twice before. The first attempt came in June. He had hidden in a trash wagon heading out of the compound. The guards discovered him before the wagon reached the gate. 3 days in the cooler, solitary confinement in a concrete cell measuring 6 feet by 9 feet. The second attempt was in September. He had forged documents identifying himself as a French laborer. Made it 12 miles from camp before a railway policeman noticed the documents were dated incorrectly. 7 days in the cooler that time, the camp commandant warned him that a third escape attempt would result in transfer to a Gestapo prison. Ash didn't care. Staying in Stalag Luft III meant sitting out the war. Every day in captivity was a day not fighting. Before the war, Ash had studied mechanical engineering at the University of Texas. 2 years before he dropped out in 1940 to join the Royal Canadian Air Force. America wasn't in the war yet, but Ash wanted to fly. The RCAF was accepting American volunteers. He trained on Tiger Moths at Elementary Flying Training School in Windsor, Ontario. Advanced training on Harvards at Camp Borden. Graduated in March 1941. Posted to Britain in May. He flew Hurricanes with 402 Squadron until December 1941. Then converted to Spitfires. By March 1943, he had logged 340 combat hours and 2 confirmed kills. A Fock Wolf W-190 over the Channel in September 1942. A Bf-109 over northern France in February 1943. The mission that ended his war came on the 24th of April, 1943. Fighters sweep over the pass, de Calais. His flight of 4 Spitfires engaged 6 FW-190s at 18,000 feet. Ash got separated during the initial merge. 2 FW-190s bracketed him. He evaded one but took cannon fire from the second. 20 mm rounds struck his engine and left wing. The Merlin quit. Oil pressure dropped to 0. He glided 8 miles and crashed, landed in a field near Abbeville. Locals hid him for 3 days. But the Gestapo swept the area. They found him in a barn. He spent 2 weeks in a Wehrmacht interrogation facility in Paris, then transferred to Stalag Luft III, 11 months in captivity. 11 months watching other pilots arrive, hearing stories of missions he should have been flying. The engineering knowledge from his university days proved useful in camp. He understood structural loads, material stress, geometric calculations. He studied the camp's construction the way an engineer studies a blueprint. He identified weaknesses, the damaged fence post, the drainage gap, the blind spot created by the storage shed's placement. Other prisoners saw a secure camp. Ash saw exploitable flaws. He just needed time to plan the exploitation properly. The storage shed where he now waited had been built in January to house Red Cross parcels. The construction crew had been British POWs supervised by 2 elderly Wehrmacht corporals who spent most of their time drinking ersatz coffee and complaining about the war. Ash had volunteered for the work detail. During construction, he had noticed something the guards had not. The shed sat 6 feet outside the patrol path. The wire fence ran 40 yards west. Between the shed and the fence lay open ground, but the guard towers couldn't see it. The geometry of the compound created a blind spot, 40 yards wide, 12 yards deep, invisible from every tower and patrol route. Ash had spent 6 weeks studying the guard patterns. Morning shift change occurred at 6 o'clock. Between 5:45 and 6 o'clock, the night guards were tired and distracted. They focused on completing their shift without incident. The morning guards hadn't fully woken up yet. That 15-minute window represented the camp's weakest point. Ash had also studied the wire. Triple fence design. Outer fence, 8 feet tall. Middle fence, 6 feet tall. Inner fence, 8 feet tall. Each fence separated by 10 feet of raked gravel. Cutting through all 3 would take 8 to 10 minutes with proper tools. Too long, but Ash had noticed during a February snowstorm that one section of the outer fence had a damaged support post. The post tilted 3 degrees eastward. Not enough for the guards to notice, but enough that the wire tension on that section was lower than specifications. He could bend it. The guards disappeared behind the supply depot. Ash checked his watch, 5:49. He had stolen the watch from a German corporal who had left it on a table in the mess hall 3 weeks earlier. British-made Smith's military timepiece. The corporal had been reassigned before realizing it was missing. Ash waited 20 seconds. Then he moved. He crossed the 40 yards in 35 seconds. Staying low, moving fast, but not running. Running would attract attention if anyone glanced toward the compound. Walking quickly looked like a prisoner heading to the latrine. He reached the fence at 5 hours, 50 minutes, and 15 seconds. The wire was 8 feet tall. Ash was 6 feet 1 inch. He grabbed the damaged post and pulled. The post tilted further. The wire sagged. He climbed. His boots found purchase on the lower wire strands. His hands gripped the top. The wire bit into his palms through the gloves he had made from a torn blanket. He pulled himself up and over, dropped to the gravel on the other side. Landed hard. His left ankle twisted. Pain shot up his leg. He ignored it. The middle fence was 10 feet ahead. This one had no damaged posts. Standard installation. Ash pulled a section of metal from his jacket pocket. A piece of bed frame, filed down over 3 weeks into a flat pry bar. He jammed it between the fence post and the wire, levered it. The staples holding the wire popped free. The wire sagged. He pushed through the gap. His jacket caught on a barb. He pulled hard. The fabric ripped. He was through. The inner fence was the problem. This one was newer, installed in December. The posts were steel instead of wood. The wire was thicker gauge. No damage, no weak points. Ash had no way to cut it or bend it, but he had noticed during construction that the bottom of this fence had been installed with a 4-inch gap between the wire and the ground. Drainage requirement. The camp engineering officer had insisted on it to prevent standing water. Ash dropped flat, pushed his arms under the wire, pulled himself forward. The wire scraped across his back. His jacket was thick enough to prevent the barbs from cutting skin. He pulled harder. His head cleared, his shoulders, his chest. The wire caught on his belt. He unbuckled it, left it, pulled his legs through. He was clear. Ash stood up, checked his watch. 5 hours, 52 minutes, and 40 seconds. The guards would complete their smoke break in 25 seconds and begin their return patrol. He ran. His ankle screamed. He ignored it. The forest was 60 yards away. Pine trees, thick undergrowth. He covered the distance in 38 seconds and disappeared into the tree line. Behind him, he heard voices. German. The guards were returning to their patrol route. They hadn't seen him. He moved deeper into the forest. 100 yards, 200. His ankle throbbed with each step. At 300 yards, he stopped and checked his watch. 5:56, 4 minutes until the morning roll call discovered he was missing. The camp would go into lockdown. Sirens would sound. Search parties would deploy. He needed to be 2 miles away before that happened. Ash had memorized the map during his time in the camp library. The camp sat 3 miles northeast of Sagan. The nearest Luftwaffe airfield was Sagan. Vapor, 8 miles southwest, small training facility. The camp intelligence network had reported that Sagan, Vapor, housed approximately 40 aircraft, mostly trainers. Faker B, Fe-131 Jungmann biplanes, Fock, Wolf FW-44 Stieglitz trainers, a few Arado R-96 advanced trainers. But intelligence also reported that the field occasionally hosted operational fighters rotating through for maintenance or pilot reassignment. Last week, a British POW who worked on the camp maintenance detail had seen a Messerschmitt Bf 109 fly over the camp heading southwest toward Sagan, Vapor. Ash's plan was simple. Reach the airfield. Find a flyable aircraft. Steal it. Fly west to Allied lines. Belgium was Subay Archiyungli LS West. A Bf Yalin Joji had a combat radius of Sembay Wushiyungli LS with internal fuel. Not enough. But if he could reach the Low Countries, he could bail out over Allied Zan-held territory or crash Jan land in a field. Either outcome was better than spending the rest of the war in Stalag Luft III. The forest was dense. Ash moved as quickly as his injured ankle allowed. He had no compass, but he knew the sun rose in the east. He kept the early morning light behind him and slightly to his left, southwest. The terrain was flat, sandy soil, thick pine forest. Every 17 yards he stopped to listen. No sounds of pursuit, no dogs. The camp sirens hadn't sounded yet. At Udenschusifen, he heard them, distant wailing. The morning roll call had discovered his absence. Search teams would deploy within Schufendong-Jutz, but they would search the immediate area first. Standard procedure assumed escaped prisoners would hide in the forest near the camp or attempt to reach the nearest town. They wouldn't expect someone to head toward a Luftwaffe airfield. Ash continued southwest. His watch showed Lingnil Bise Tiwansauscher, and he cleared the forest and saw open farmland. Rolling fields, scattered farmhouses. He stayed near the tree line, moved parallel to a dirt road that ran southwest. The road led toward Sagan. The airfield was on the southwest edge of town. He walked for Launsauscher hours. His ankle had swollen inside his boot. Each step sent pain up his leg. At Baden-Wuschiefen, he saw the airfield. Sagan and Vapor sat on flat ground surrounded by agricultural fields. Single concrete runway, 10 meters long, oriented northeast 10 southwest. 3 hangars on the eastern side. Control tower. Administration buildings, fuel depot. Approximately Arscher aircraft visible on the flight line. Ash crouched in a drainage ditch 18 yards from the perimeter fence and studied the layout. The airfield was active. He watched mechanics working on aircraft. Fuel trucks moving between the flight line and the depot. 2 Arado AR Joshido trainers took off while he watched. The field was operational, not on alert. Nobody was looking for threats. This was eBay Uni less inside Germany. Allied bombers didn't reach this far east in daylight anymore. The Luftwaffe personnel were relaxed. Ash scanned the aircraft on the flight line, Befaker biplanes, Fock-Jan Wolf trainers, Wannerado Joshilio, and at the far end of the flight line, near the third hangar, a Messerschmitt Bf G single-jan engine fighter, angular fuselage, distinct profile. The aircraft was painted in standard Luftwaffe day fighter camouflage, dark green and gray splinter pattern on top surfaces, light blue undersides. No unit markings visible from this distance. The fighter sat alone, censure yards from the nearest hangar. Ground crew had chocked the wheels and covered the engine cowling with a tarp. Maintenance aircraft probably. Something wrong with the engine or avionics. But it was there, and it was the only operational fighter type on the field. Ash checked his watch. Jodan Schutziefen. He had been free for Senschauscharars and Senschafindon Utes. The camp search parties would have expanded their search radius by now. Roadblocks would be going up on major routes. Local police would be checking trains and buses, but nobody would be watching the airfield. He studied the perimeter fence. Standard chain Jan link, low feet tall, guard posts at the main gate and the fuel depot. No roving patrols visible. The field security focused on preventing sabotage and unauthorized access by civilians, not on keeping people out who were determined to enter. At Jodern Senschafindon, Ash moved. He approached the fence from the southwest, away from the guard posts. The fence had no barbed wire on top. He climbed it in Baumhaus econs, dropped to the grass on the airfield side, immediately moved toward the nearest building, a small maintenance shed. He reached it without being seen. From the shed, he had a clear view of the Bf Jojo. The aircraft was Basha yards away. Between him and the fighter lay open tarmac. Crossing it meant exposure. But the alternative was staying in the shed until someone found him. Ash waited until a fuel truck drove past, blocking the line of sight from the control tower. Then he walked. Not running. Running would attract attention. He walked purposefully across the tarmac like he belonged there. Like he was a pilot heading to his aircraft. He wore a torn jacket and muddy trousers. His appearance was wrong, but from Yaldinen yards away in the morning sun, he looked like maintenance personnel. He reached the Bf Jojo at Jodan Sishifen. The fighter was a Bf Jojo G Fulio, the most common variant in Luftwaffe service by E10 Jobai Sishasi, powered by a Daimler Jan Benz DB Lilingwu A inverted VFR engine producing E10 775 horsepower. Maximum speed 386英里每小时 at 22,600 feet. Service ceiling 39,700 feet. Armament typically consisted of one Senschhalmi Mk Yalumba cannon firing through the propeller hub and two Schusenhalmi Mg E by Senchaimi machine guns mounted above the engine. Combat radius approximately Sembai Wushiyuni Ellis Son internal fuel. Ash had never flown a Bf Jojo, but he had flown Spitfires. Both were single-gen engine fighters. Both had similar performance envelopes. He understood the principles. He pulled the tarp off the engine cowling. The Daimler Jan Benz engine looked complete. No obvious damage. The cowling panels were secured with Dezus fasteners. Everything appeared intact. He moved to the cockpit. The canopy was closed but not locked. He pulled the canopy release. The hinged canopy swung open to the right. The cockpit was standard Bf Jojo layout. Stick Jan mounted in the center. Rudder pedals. Throttle quadrant on the left side. Instrument panel crowded with gauges in the German style. Everything labeled in German, but Ash could read enough to identify critical instruments. Airspeed indicator, altimeter, fuel gauge, engine temperature, oil pressure. The fuel gauge showed half full, approximately 18 liters, enough for maybe E by Basha uni less. Not enough to reach Belgium, but enough to reach the front lines if he flew directly west. Ash climbed into the cockpit. The seat was too far forward. He adjusted it. The Bf Yolingjo's cockpit was notoriously cramped. Tighter than a Spitfire, he settled in and studied the controls. Ignition switches on the left side panel, fuel selector, primer pump magnetos. The startup sequence would be similar to other German aircraft he had studied in intelligence briefings. At Jodan Sicherjofen, Ash heard voices, German, two mechanics walking toward the hangar 6 yards away. They hadn't seen him yet. He ducked lower in the cockpit. The mechanics continued past. Didn't look in his direction. Ash waited until they entered the hangar. Then he began the startup procedure. He checked the fuel selector, set to main tank. Good. He found the battery master switch, flipped it on. Instrument needle swung to life. Fuel pressure gauge showed 0. Engine not primed yet. He located the primer pump on the left side panel. Hand pump required Liu-to-Ba Meltrox to prime the fuel system. He pumped, felt resistance build. The fuel pressure gauge needle climbed. He found the magneto switches. 2 switches, left and right magneto, both in the off position. Standard. He moved them to the on position. Located the starter button, red button on the instrument panel. He placed his left hand on the throttle, cracked it open slightly. His right hand reached for the starter button. He pressed it. Nothing happened. He pressed again. Still nothing. Then he realized the inertia starter. The Bf Yolingjo used a mechanical inertia starter, not an electric starter. He needed to wind it up first. He found the hand crank port on the left side of the cockpit. No crank. The ground crew had removed it. Standard security procedure. Without the crank, the aircraft couldn't start. Ash looked around the cockpit, searched the map case behind the seat. Nothing. He climbed out and checked the external access panels. Nothing. The crank was gone. He checked his watch, Jodan Wushililfin. He had been on the airfield for Arshasenfindon Utes. Eventually, someone would notice an unfamiliar person sitting in a fighter aircraft. He needed another solution. Then he remembered something from Spitfire training. The inertia starter could be wound manually by rotating the propeller. It required strength and proper technique, but it was possible. The propeller had to be turned backward 6 to 8 complete rotations. That would wind the flywheel inside the starter mechanism. Then the starter button would release the stored energy and spin the engine. Ash moved to the front of the aircraft. The Bf Yolingjo's propeller was a VDM-3 Jan blade constant Jan speed unit. Each blade was approximately Wu feet long. He grabbed the tip of one blade, pulled it backward. The propeller rotated. Heavy. The reduction gearing made it difficult to turn. He pulled harder. The blade moved through one complete rotation. Then another. He counted. 6 rotations. His shoulders burned. 7, 8. The flywheel inside the starter was wound. He ran back to the cockpit, climbed in. Throttle cracked open. Magnetos on. Mixture rich. He pressed the starter button. The engine coughed. The propeller rotated 3 blades. Stopped. He had wound the starter, but not enough energy remained to complete ignition. He needed more rotations. He climbed out again, went to the propeller, pulled. 9 rotations. 10, 11, 12. Back to the cockpit, pressed the starter. The engine coughed again, caught. The Daimler Jan Benz roared to life. Black smoke belched from the exhaust stacks. The propeller spun up. The engine settled into a rough idle. Babe dran may fin. Ash scanned the gauges. Oil pressure climbing, engine temperature normal. Fuel pressure good. The aircraft was running. At 9:58, he heard shouting. German voices? Mechanics had heard the engine start. They were running toward the aircraft. Ash reached for the canopy, pulled it closed, locked it. He pushed the throttle forward. The engine responded. The RPM climbed. 1,200. 1,500. The aircraft lurched forward. The wheel chocks were still in place. The fighter rolled over them, broke them apart. Ash had no radio communication, no clearance, no flight plan. He turned the aircraft toward the runway. The Bf-109's narrow, track landing gear made ground handling difficult. The aircraft wanted to weather vane. He countered with rudder and brake. The fighter rolled across the tarmac toward the runway threshold. Behind him, vehicles were moving. A truck pulled out from the hangar area, chasing him. Ash ignored it. He reached the runway at 10:01, turned onto the concrete, pushed the throttle to takeoff power. The Daimler. Ben's engine screamed. The aircraft accelerated. The narrow landing gear made the takeoff roll unstable. The fighter wanted to swing left. Ash countered with right rudder. Heavy pressure required, 60 miles per hour, 70, 80. The tail came up, 90 miles per hour. He felt the controls lighten, 100 miles per hour. The main wheels lifted. He was airborne. Ash retracted the landing gear. The gear motor whined. The gear indicators showed wheels up and locked. He reduced power slightly, climbed at 160 miles per hour. The altimeter unwound, 500 feet, 1,500. He turned west. The heading indicator showed 270 degrees due west. Behind him, Sagan, Vapor Airfield receded. He could see the truck stopped at the runway threshold. Figures standing beside it, watching him fly away. At 10:07, Ash leveled off at 8,000 feet. He checked the fuel gauge, still showing half full, but the needle had dropped slightly. The Daimler. Benz consumed approximately 240 liters per hour at cruise power. He had maybe 200 liters remaining. That gave him 50 minutes of flight time. At 200 miles per hour cruise speed, that meant 160 miles maximum range. Belgium was 420 miles west. He wouldn't make it, but the front lines were closer. By March 1944, Allied forces had not yet invaded France, but they held positions in England just across the Channel. If he could reach the Dutch coast, he could bail out over the North Sea and hope for rescue. Or he could try for a closer option. Luxembourg was approximately 280 miles west. German occupied, but closer to Allied lines. He could crash, land there and attempt to evade on foot. Ash maintained 270 degrees heading. The German countryside passed below. Farmland, small towns, roads, and rivers. At 10:19, he saw fighters. 2 aircraft at his 11 o'clock position, 2,000 feet below. Bf-109s, probably from another airfield, scrambled to intercept the stolen fighter. Radio traffic would have alerted every Luftwaffe base in the region. They were looking for him. Ash pushed the throttle forward. The engine responded. His airspeed increased to 280 miles per hour. The pursuing fighters turned toward him. They had seen him. The Bf-109G-6 Ash was flying, had the same performance as the fighters chasing him. Same engine, same airframe, no advantage. But Ash had altitude. He was 2,000 feet above them. He studied the intercept geometry. The 2 fighters were climbing in a loose combat spread, approximately 500 yards apart. Standard Luftwaffe doctrine: one would engage, the other would position for a follow-up attack. Ash knew this tactic. He had fought against it over France. The key was to never engage the first fighter on his terms. He checked his fuel. The gauge showed less than 1/3 remaining. Maybe 30 minutes of flight time at current power settings. The pursuing fighters were closer now. 3,000 yards and closing. Their closure rate was approximately 150 miles per hour. They would be in firing range in 90 seconds. Ash scanned the sky. No other aircraft visible. Just these 2. But more would be coming. Every Luftwaffe base between here and Berlin would have fighters airborne by now, searching for the stolen 109. The lead pursuer opened fire at 1,200 yards, far beyond effective range for the MG-131 machine guns. Ash saw tracers arc past his left wing, falling short by 300 yards. The German pilot was either inexperienced or trying to force Ash into a defensive maneuver. Ash maintained course. Waited. The fighters closed to 800 yards. The lead fighter fired again. This time the tracers came closer, some past 50 yards to Ash's right. The German was correcting his aim, walking the fire toward the target. He maintained his heading. Let them close. At 2 miles range, the fighters pulled up to match his altitude. They approached from behind and below, standard intercept geometry. Ash waited until they reached 1 mile. Then he rolled inverted and pulled. The Bf-109 carved through a splits maneuver. -4 GS pushed him against his shoulder straps. Blood rushed to his head. The horizon spun. He rolled upright, pointing east, back toward Sagan. The pursuing fighters tried to follow. Their turn radius was wide. By the time they reversed, Ash had 3 miles separation. He turned west again, pushed the throttle to maximum continuous power. The engine temperature climbed. Oil pressure held steady. He leveled at 10,000 feet. Airspeed 320 miles per hour. The fuel gauge showed 1/4 remaining. Maybe 25 minutes of flight time. He checked his watch. 10:34. He had been airborne for 33 minutes. The Dutch coast was still 180 miles away. He wouldn't make it. Luxembourg was 140 miles, still too far. He needed a closer option. Below him, he saw a river. The Oder. It ran north, south. He was crossing it now. Beyond the river lay more farmland, then forest. Then in the distance, he saw what he needed. An airfield. Small. Probably a satellite field or emergency landing strip. Single grass runway. No tower. One small building. No aircraft visible. It looked abandoned. Ash checked the fuel gauge. The needle touched the red line. Empty. The engine was running on fumes. He had maybe 5 minutes before fuel starvation. He turned toward the airfield. Started his descent. At 2,000 feet. The engine coughed. Fuel starvation. The propeller windmilled. Ash maintained his glide. The airfield was 3 miles ahead. The Bf-109 had a glide ratio of approximately 10:1. From 2,000 feet, he could glide 4 miles enough. He configured for landing. Gear down. The gear motor whined. The main wheels extended and locked. Flaps down. The flap motor ran. The flaps deployed to landing position. The aircraft slowed. His approach speed was 110 miles per hour. The grass runway was 1,200 feet long. Enough for a Bf-109 if he touched down in the first 200 feet. Ash crossed the threshold at 105 miles per hour. The main wheels touched grass. He pulled the throttle to idle. The dead engine provided no thrust. The aircraft rolled. 600 feet, 800 feet, 1,000 feet. The fighter slowed. 40 miles per hour, 30, 20. It stopped with 80 feet of runway remaining. Ash sat in the cockpit for 10 seconds. Then he unlocked the canopy, opened it, climbed out. His legs shook. He had flown a stolen Bf-109 for 41 minutes and covered approximately 140 miles. The airfield was indeed abandoned. The building was empty. No personnel, no vehicles. He checked the building, found maps. One showed his location. He was 15 miles inside Belgium. Allied lines were 60 miles west. He could walk it, or he could wait. Within hours, Allied reconnaissance would spot the abandoned Bf-109. They would send someone to investigate. Ash sat on the grass next to the fighter and looked at the aircraft that had carried him to freedom. The Bf-109's camouflage was scuffed and faded. Battle damage from previous engagements showed in patched panels along the fuselage. This aircraft had been through combat before he stole it. Some other Luftwaffe pilot had flown it, fought in it, possibly died in it. Now it sat on Belgian grass, 140 miles from where it started the morning. The Daimler-Benz engine ticked as it cooled. Oil dripped from the cowling onto the grass. Ash checked his watch. 11:27. 6 hours since he had crawled under the wire at Stalag Luft III. In that time, he had walked 8 miles through German forest, infiltrated a Luftwaffe airfield, stolen a fighter aircraft, evaded 2 interceptors, and flown into Allied territory. The probability of success for any single element of that chain had been low. The probability of success for all elements combined had been nearly 0. Yet here he sat. He thought about the other prisoners still at Stalag Luft III, the ones planning tunnel escapes that would take months and probably fail, the ones forging documents that would be detected at the first checkpoint, the ones waiting for the war to end, hoping liberation would come before they grew too old to remember what freedom felt like. Ash had been one of them until this morning. Now he was out. At 14:11, he heard engines, Allied engines. A flight of 4 P-47 Thunderbolts flew over the field at 500 feet, saw the Bf 109 circled. One aircraft waggled its wings. They had seen him. 20 minutes later, a jeep arrived, American soldiers. 1st Army Reconnaissance Unit. They found a German fighter sitting on an abandoned Belgian airfield, and an American pilot sitting beside it, wearing a torn jacket and muddy trousers. William Ash had escaped Stalag Luft III at 5:47. By 10:01, he had stolen a Bf 109. By 10:42, he was in Belgium. 4 hours and 55 minutes from escape to freedom. The stolen fighter was examined by Allied intelligence. They flew it to England for evaluation. The aircraft provided valuable data on current Bf 109 performance and systems. Ash was debriefed, given 30 days leave, and returned to operational flying. He flew Spitfires for the remainder of the war. He survived. The Bf 109 he stole is believed to have been scrapped in 1946. No records indicate what happened to it after the intelligence evaluation, but for 41 minutes on the 18th of March, 1944, that aircraft carried an escaped American pilot from captivity to freedom, and that brief flight changed how Allied intelligence assessed the possibility of escape and evasion using enemy equipment. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. It helps us bring more forgotten stories like this to viewers who appreciate real history. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're documenting the stories that textbooks skip, the individual acts of courage that changed outcomes. Drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. These stories deserve to be remembered.